Welcome back, Defenders. A lot has changed in the last week. Modern warfare has changed in the last week because Ukraine claims for the first time ever they shot down a $50 million fighter jet with a sea drone. Ukraine's military successfully destroyed a Russian Su-30 fighter jet using a missile fired from a Magura V-5 Marine drone. Ukraine has released the drone video. I'll link this down below. But this has never happened before. Ever. An unmanned sea drone shooting down a fighter jet. Now, a couple months ago, Ukraine did successfully shoot down a helicopter, but a helicopter moves a lot slower than a fighter jet. And Ukraine might have done it twice. Ukraine destroys 2 Russian warplanes within 24 hours, including the first ever naval drone strike. So the second plane, we don't have all the details yet. Ukraine has not released the video. The second jet was shot down somewhere near Crimea. But the first jet, the one we have the video for, this happened near the port city of Novorossiysk. This is located inside of Russia. And this is the Magura V-5 drone boat, capable of doing several different functions. And Magura stands for Maritime Autonomous Guard Unmanned Robotic Apparatus. V5, I imagine, because Ukraine has been developing this technology for 3 years. Constant development, constant iteration to get to this point. Unmanned drones shooting down fighter jets. And they shot it down with a Western-supplied AIM-9 Sidewinder missile. The Sidewinder is a short-range air-to-air missile. So Ukraine is being innovative, they're adapting, and they used a short-range air-to-air missile to be launched from an unmanned drone boat off the coast of Russia. This is brilliant, guys. This is beautiful. I am astonished that Ukraine was capable of doing this. What is the defense for this? Modern warfare has changed. One military in the world has this technology, is capable of doing this, and now every navy, every air force in the world is behind Ukraine, and they're going to have to catch up. Every navy, every air force in the world now has to copy and replicate this technology. How do we make unmanned drone boats that can shoot fighter jets out of the sky? This is unbelievable. And what about the Russians? What innovations are they developing? And this is a donkey with an anti-drone jammer on its back. Ukraine spent the last 3 years figuring out how to adapt Sidewinder missiles on unmanned drones to shoot down jets. And the Russians just slapped an anti-drone jammer on a donkey. My money is still on Ukraine, guys. We are approaching the May 9th Victory Day parade. Kremlin calls proposed 3-day ceasefire a test of Kyiv's readiness for peace, despite Moscow's rejection of a 30-day ceasefire. So the Russians are currently begging the Ukrainians, let us have 3 days off from the war so that we can have our very pretty propaganda parade. It's important for Putin. And Zelensky says no. Zelensky rejects Putin's truce proposal as theatrical, and instead backs a 30-day ceasefire plan from the United States. If you want 3 days off from May 9th, then let's make it 30. Let's make it an entire month of a ceasefire and see if we can find peace. But the Russians don't want peace. Instead, they are using it as an opportunity, once again, to push their propaganda that somehow Ukraine is the one who doesn't want peace. Russian officials say Zelensky has nothing sacred as he rejects the Victory Day truce while instead proposing 30 days. This is honestly stupid. Even if Ukraine agreed to it, nothing on the front lines would be different. Russia for 3 days wouldn't actually stop drone and artillery attacks. They would carry on the war as normal. They just want Moscow to be safe for 3 days. And the Russians are doing nothing different. The Russians every day are attacking civilian cities. Russian drone attack on Kyiv injures 7 people, including 2 children, damaging a shopping mall. Russian drone attack on Kherson kills 1 and injures 2. Russian attacks on the city of Kharkiv wound 47. Russia is increasing their terrorist attacks against civilian cities because their military can't make progress on the battlefield. I don't think I've shown you guys a map update in weeks because the Russians aren't moving. They're not making progress. It was 8 or 9 months ago we were talking about the imminent fall of Pokrovsk, and Pokrovsk continues to hold. The Russians are no closer to taking it than they were 6 or 7 months ago. Yes, the Russians are gobbling up wheat fields in the middle of nowhere, but they're exposed. This is a kill zone, especially with Ukraine's newly developed fiber optic FPV drones. Any Russian forces within 20 kilometers of the city of Pokrovsk, they're going to get slammed by a fiber optic drone. There's no defense for this. Ukraine says they are not responsible for the safety of foreign officials traveling to Moscow for the May 9th parade. It's not Ukraine's job to secure the safety of foreign leaders choosing to go to Russia when Russia is at war. Russia could have peace, but Russia doesn't want peace. And this really is insane for foreign heads of state to be willing to travel to Moscow for a stupid parade when the Russians are shooting down civilian planes accidentally. This was only 4 months ago that Azerbaijani Airlines Flight 8243 was accidentally shot down by Russian air defense systems. So no, it's not safe for anyone to be going to Moscow. Not because of Ukraine, but because of Russian incompetence. But because Zelensky said it's not Ukraine's job to secure the safety of anyone traveling to Moscow, the Russians seized on this opportunity and they're trying to say that Zelensky is a bad guy and a terrorist. So here is Olga on Kremlin State TV. This is what she's saying. We start with absolutely shocking news. The scoundrel Zelensky allowed for a possible strike on Red Square during the parade on May 9th. In a video message, he suggested that the Russians should be afraid. At the same time, it should be understood that the Kyiv dictator threatens not only Putin and all of us, but also 20 world leaders who will come to Moscow to celebrate the Holy Victory Day parade? How can a military parade be holy? Okay. That is, Kyiv is going to strike the place where there will be leaders of 3 nuclear powers and the Minister of Defense of a 4th one, India. There is probably no need to explain what this will lead to. More nuclear threats from the Russians. Well, we can only guess how the grandfather of the Ukrainian usurper, Semyon Ivanovich Zelensky, would feel about this. So they're invoking Zelensky's grandfather, who was a World War II veteran. If you want to have a parade, Russia, just agree to a 30-day ceasefire. Why not? Why not? Do I think Ukraine is going to try to attack this parade and kill anyone? No, I don't. But Ukraine could interrupt the parade in a non-lethal way. If Ukraine were to fly a drone that had no explosives and just land it on the parade grounds, this would steal the story. It would dominate the news. If Ukraine just flew an unmanned drone with no explosives and crashed it into the parade, straight away, it would interrupt the parade, embarrass Putin, make him look weak, and it would be a symbolic victory for Ukraine. Is this going to happen? I don't know. But no, I don't think Ukraine is going to attack or try to kill anyone. Ukraine does not target civilians, even though this is a valid military target. There will be a lot of civilians present. Failed peace, the Trump bid to end the Russia-Ukraine war fast ends in shambles. The latest White House party line is that Moscow and Kyiv foolishly ignored Donald Trump's brilliant diplomatic and deal-making skills. So now the war ending is their problem. Trump's bored and he's going to give up. Peace terms are tabled, but Ukraine war won't end anytime soon, according to Vice President J.D. Vance. I don't think I've shown a clip of J.D. Vance anytime soon. Nobody really likes this guy. But he is Elon Musk's proxy. Elon Musk and Peter Thiel, they love the Russians. They bought this guy a senatorship in Ohio. They then bought him the vice presidency for Donald Trump. And Vance is interesting because he has no original opinions. He has no original thoughts. And if he is willing to say that the United States is giving up on peace talks, which was really just Donald Trump pressuring Ukraine to surrender, if he's saying they're willing to give up, this is a good sign for Ukraine and a bad sign for the Russians. So I'm going to play this clip of J.D. Vance saying stupid things, and then we'll talk about it.
I think, first of all, we have to give the president some credit here because there was a really big breakthrough and hasn't gotten that much coverage. But for 3 years, these sides have fought, and each of them has said, no peace, we're going to fight until the other guy's basically knocked out. What we've seen now in the last couple of weeks is each side has put down, this is our peace proposal. The Ukrainians did it, the Russians did it. And now I think the question is to see whether we can actually find some middle ground here for these guys to bring this conflict to a close. I really don't believe that any person, the 8 billion people in the world, I don't think anybody could have gotten this deal done other than Donald J. Trump. When I say this deal, I mean getting these guys to actually propose a peace settlement, but it's going to be up to the Russians and the Ukrainians now that each side...
Even when Donald Trump clearly fails, all of his toadies have to continue praising him, saying that he's a genius. That only Donald Trump could get Ukraine and Russia to state publicly what their peace demands are. When we've known for 3 years what both Russia and Ukraine wants. Ukraine wants Russia to stop attacking them and get out of their country, and the Russians want to steal some land and kill as many Ukrainians as possible. They want a completely defenseless Ukraine that they can eventually absorb into their new empire. But only Donald Trump is a genius enough to get that publicly stated. We're going to move on. Why is Putin not taking the deal? Donald Trump offered the Russians the best deal they're ever going to get. All sanctions lifted, normalized relations, we're going to trade with you, no tariffs, you get to keep everything you've stolen, no accountability, no reparations, and we're going to recognize Crimea as belonging to Russia. That was Trump's final offer. That was his peace deal just to get the Russians to agree to a 30-day ceasefire. And Putin told him no. Why? Here's Garry Kasparov. Putin needs perpetual war. He cannot bring back the hundreds of thousands of murderers and torturers he has unleashed on Ukraine. It will either be war in Ukraine until Russia is defeated, or an expanded war on Europe if Ukraine falls. Russian defeat is the only peace option. Putin can't stop the war, not even for 30 days. If he stops the war, if he stops the meat assaults, if he stops the drone strikes and the artillery strikes, he is concerned he won't be able to start it back up. That if the guns go silent for 30 days, his soldiers will mutiny rather than resume the barbaric, inhumane tactics that the Russian military uses on the front lines every day. So anybody in the Russian military on the front lines, they're there until they die. They're not allowed to go home. They'll never return to their families. They'll never return to civilian lives. They are going to keep marching, keep assaulting, keep attacking until the Russians take back the Baltics, take back the Caucasus, take all of Ukraine, probably get parts of Romania, Finland, and Poland. These wars are never going to end. Putin has made the calculation and has decided it's never going to stop until Russia has reached its maximum geographic extent. What about this guy? Trump officials alarmed by Witkoff's solo talks with Putin. Steve Witkoff has now met with Vladimir Putin 4 times, and no one really knows what they talked about. And this is very bizarre because Steve Witkoff doesn't have any diplomatic experience. He doesn't have any government experience. He knows nothing about Ukraine or Russia or diplomacy, but he has been meeting with Putin, and why did it fail? This is what we're trying to figure out. Putin is said to keep demanding Ukraine land despite US pressure. According to Bloomberg, Putin demanded the full control over Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson during his talks with Witkoff, rejecting partial control. Witkoff, however, proposed a ceasefire along the current front lines. That's what Trump wants, and this led to a deadlock in the negotiations. Witkoff has met with Putin 4 times, and Putin told him the exact same thing. I'll agree to a 30-day ceasefire if Ukraine gives me all of the rest of Donetsk, all of Zaporizhia, including a city of 700,000 people, and the city of Kherson and the north bank of the Dnipro River. And not even Donald Trump ever expected that Ukraine would agree to that. So he didn't even take it serious. Instead, he said, this is Trump, just keep what you took. And let's stop fighting and make some money together. And Putin told him no. So this is where Trump is starting to flip on the Russians. Zelensky says Trump's Ukraine stance may be shifting after the Vatican meeting. The Vatican meeting helped, but I also think when Trump was sworn in January, he wanted to accomplish this at least in the first 100 days, or get some kind of grand peace summits in Saudi Arabia. Putin and Trump would meet, shake hands, settle this, and then Trump would get his Nobel Peace Prize. So Trump is genuinely hurt. His feelings are hurt that his good friend Vladimir Putin won't do him a favor and at least agree to a 30-day ceasefire so that he can get his Nobel Peace Prize. It's so stupid, guys. But I don't care. I don't care what Trump thinks or feels as long as he does the correct thing, and he's coming around. Military cargo flights to NATO's Poland hub are spiking. It's clearly more planes than usual. By weights, the air supply effort is being led by cargo 747s contracted by the US Air Force. So instead of 1 or 2 planes a week, which is where we were at, we're now getting 1 or 2 planes every other day. Ukraine did successfully purchase $50 million worth of military aid. I think this was a test sample to see how will the Russians react. How will Trump's core base react, who have favorable opinions of Russia? On top of this, other things are moving. U.S. confirms sending decommissioned F-16s to Ukraine for spare parts. These are the pictures that went viral. This is Tucson, Arizona. This is close to where I live. And that is a wrapped-up F-16 being loaded on a Ukrainian cargo plane. And this is actually something new. This is an international cargo transporter flying a Ukrainian flag, landing in Arizona, picking up F-16s. And this isn't even something that Joe Biden was willing to do. This was actually a point of contention over a year ago. The Ukrainians said, we can save the United States money. We can save on costs by just flying our own cargo planes to the United States to pick stuff up. And Joe Biden said no. Joe Biden said, no. We're going to pay for the transportation to Poland. You have to pick it up in Poland. But this is new. Donald Trump is okay with Ukrainian cargo planes flying into the United States to pick up military supplies for themselves. That's weird, guys. As Putin digs in, Trump approves F-16 training deal for Ukraine. The Pentagon has greenlit a $310 million package for Ukraine as peace talks with Russia stall. This $310 million package, Ukraine is paying for it, that's fine. It includes aircraft upgrades, pilot and crew training. So more Ukrainian pilots are going to, I think, come to the United States for F-16 training. Spare parts and repairs, ground equipment, software and technical docs, logistics and surveys. Why is Donald Trump this week approving all of this stuff having to do with F-16s? And it's because Ukraine is using their F-16 fleet for air defense. When Russia launches drones and missiles, Ukrainian F-16s take to the skies. Because it's more costly and difficult to get more Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine, this is a faster solution to save civilian lives today. This is what Zelensky must have told Trump, which is why Trump is agreeing to all of this stuff having to do with F-16s. And then we got this. This is incredible. U.S. to send refurbished Patriot air defense system from Israel to Ukraine. Israel is currently upgrading all of their air defense systems to a domestically produced superior system, and they're decommissioning their fleet of Patriot air defense systems. And this was Trump. He agreed to allow Israel to send this Patriot air defense system to Ukraine. Now, a Patriot battery system is over, $1 billion, so I don't understand how this is being financed, if Ukraine is paying for it or someone, but Ukraine needs more and better air defense systems today, and we're seeing immediate action being taken. This is huge. U.S. prepares fresh Russian sanctions, but Trump's approval remains uncertain. So Congress is willing to act. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham says he has 72 senators who are willing to vote in favor of bone-crushing sanctions on Russia's energy and banking industries, but they're waiting for Trump. And I think Trump is going to stall. Trump might stall for another couple weeks just to see how Russia is reacting and if Russia wants to offer him a better deal. But if Russia continues the war unchanged for another month or two, this sanctions paction is going to happen. I think Trump is going to let Lindsey Graham lead the charge and take sanctions to a 10, something that Joe Biden and Jake Sullivan were never willing to do. So here is what Donald Trump is actually afraid of. Because MAGA has been fed so much Kremlin propaganda the last 3 years, the true believers of Trump's core base are freaking out by all these developments. This is Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, Moscow Marge, the most pro-Russian member of Congress. And she tweeted 2 days ago, "We don't want the rare earth minerals in Ukraine that will bind America to never-ending spending and military defense. We have plenty of our own rare earth minerals we can mine right here at home, creating American jobs and wealth, but the federal government needs to allow it." Here's a tweet from Alexander Dugin. He's also getting nervous. "The rare earth deal with Ukraine is wrong thing to do. It means war. American interests are sold for globalist warmongers. Bad decision, trap for Trump." And here's Alexander Dugin quote tweeting Moscow Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie says, "I represent the base, and I'm frustrated and upset over the direction of things. You better be clear, the base is not happy." Wow. Dugin responds, "That is the genuine, authentic MAGA base voice. It would be political suicide for Trump to ignore it. MAGA is not happy with Ukrainian rare earth deal and with new and old imperialist wars. MAGA base didn't vote for that." This is Trump betraying his base because he has to. He has to. All of these conversations Trump has with the Prime Minister of the UK, the President of Poland, Macron, everyone in the liberal, democratic, Western alliance, like, this is so stupid. This was never going to work. And now we get to see the MAGA base be disappointed that Trump isn't actually going to make this alliance with Russia happen. Wow. And why would you want to ally with the Russians when they're so bad at everything? Russia suffers 160,000 casualties in 2025 so far, heading for the war's deadliest year. This chart is fascinating. So yes, these are Ukraine's estimates, and you can say they're overvalued, overinflated. But if Ukraine consistently overcounts or whatever, the trends are still the same. So this line right here shows 2022, what was the casualty count by month. This line shows 2023, 2024, and then the first months of 2025. So we can now stack them on top of each other to see year over year, if you want to, have constant variables like the weather or whatever. And in March of 2022, 386. 2023, 776, 2024, 910, 2025, 1328. This war is getting deadlier and deadlier, probably for both sides, but especially for the Russians as they are taking more risk and sending their troops into combat with worse material and less training. In addition to Ukraine just adapting and innovating and coming up with better solutions to stop Russian attacks. This chart is crazy. And here's another one for you. Russian war casualties reach 105,000 identified dead. This is according to an investigation by Mediazona. What Mediazona does is they just look at death announcements in public papers. If they have verified proof of a Russian soldier who died in Ukraine being buried in Russia, they track that, they record that, and obviously the casualty and death number is much higher, but this is just confirmed, identified. And they put it into a bar chart with an age distribution. And this is confirmed. 7 Russian soldiers killed fighting in Ukraine between the ages of 69 and 71. 25 between the ages of 66 and 68. What is the median? And it's 10,314 confirmed killed between the ages of 30 and 35. Putin is killing off an entire generation of Russian men when they're not even really making progress on the battlefield anymore. I do want to mention this one piece of good news for Ukraine. The Czech initiative to deliver up to 1.8 million shells to Ukraine this year. This has done a lot to help stabilize the front lines. Thank you so much to the President of the Czech Republic. This has been a huge help. Final feel-good video I have for you guys. In Ukraine, every life matters. A dog in Kharkiv, frightened by explosions during a Russian drone attack, jumped into a river and then was unable to get out of the water by himself. So rescuers got a boat and they saved this dog's life.
Толян, возьми вначале ее. А? За шкирку возьми. За шиворот, за шкирку. Вот так, вот так. Ой, давай. Вот хорошая.
It's a lucky dog. Continue supporting Ukraine. Russia will be defeated. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.